This is a Global Tel-Link prepaid call from
Huckleberry Finn.
a resident of St. Louis, Missouri.
From This Colonial Life and KWMU St. Louis, it's Serial. One story told, week by week. I'm Mark Twain. Last week, we left off with Huck and Jim escaping the Gringerfords' feud at the last minute, but their troubles were far from over. A couple of days later, they ran into two con men, and I was able to get an exclusive interview with the pair, who are currently recovering from some injuries.
Hello. Howdy.
So, guys, just right off the bat, I just want to ask, Huckleberry referred to you guys as the King and the Duke, which aren't exactly normal names. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Oh, well, you see, my great-grandfather, the eldest son of the Duke of Bainbridge, fled to this country in search of freedom. But in his absence, the second son of the Duke seized the title. The real Duke, the eldest son, was ignored. I am a descendant of that eldest son, and thus I am the rightful Duke of Bridgewater. Thus the nickname Duke.
Huh, and you as well, sir. What's the origin behind your name?
Well, Mr. Twain, you were gazing upon the poor, disappeared Louis XVII, the son Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. The man you see before you is none other than the rightful King of France.
Wait, but how is that possible? That must mean that you're 600 or 700 years old.
Trouble has done it, Mr. Twain. Trouble has done it. Trouble has brung these gray hairs and this premature balditude. I promise you, I really
Though the truth of these statements should probably be taken with a grain of salt, these two did have some exploits that were just as notable as their supposed titles. So, what can you tell me about your new play, the Royal Nonsuch?
Well, you see, it went a little like this. The Duke here would paint me all types of colors, and I would go out on stage naked and on all fours and sit there for a minute or two. Now, the townspeople didn't like this much, and thought they was being swindled. And in order to solve this issue, they decided to tell the others that they should see this play, so they could hide the fact that they was scammed.
And how did that end up for you?
Well, after just 2 nights of this tomfoolery, we decided to escape, and just in the nick of time, too, for the townspeople were right about to attack us. Following that, we flowed down the river until we came to find a steamboat upon which we learned of the passing of one Peter Wilkes. This set us up wonderfully for a beautiful con in which we pretended that we were the brothers of this deceased man, and thus we were the heirs of all of his estate and property, and over the next few weeks we progressively sold much of it for great personal profit. Despite it, the gold we had earned mysteriously disappeared from its hiding place, and we were forced to make our escape with Huckleberry and his slave when the true brothers finally arrived. We then went down the river some, and eventually found a local farmer by the name of Silas Phelps, who, in need of money, we sold Jim to in order to earn a quick buck.
And so, how did you incur these injuries?
Well, we was in need of some more money, so we decided that we should perform our famous comedy again. But the people was ready for us. When I crawled out on stage with all my hands and knees, they rose up from the back and took us to be tarred and feathered. That's how we got these here burns.
But what the King and the Duke neglected to mention is that when they sold Jim, this sent our protagonist Huck into a fit of sadness. And when he asked who they sold Jim to, the Duke tried to lie to him. But he slipped up in his lie, and Huck learned the truth. Jim had been sold to a local farmer and preacher.
Hello, my name is Silas Phelps, and I live and preach in the great state of Arkansas.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. So, what can you tell me about Huckleberry Finn?
Oh, that rascal! He arrived one summer day and fooled the whole family into thinking he was in fact my nephew Tom Sawyer.
Wouldn't that cause some issue if Tom actually showed up?
Well, in fact, he did, but he just pretended to be his own little brother, Sid.
And what can you tell me about their plot to free Jim?
It was an escape story that will span the rest of time, though unnecessarily so. You see, Tom always fancied himself a criminal mastermind, so he endeavored to make freeing Jim as difficult as can be. He terrorized his poor Aunt Sally, stealing her spoons and clothing to fashion tools with which to break out, when all he needed to do was open the door and let Jim out. Eventually, he wrote a letter informing me and the townspeople of the plot, and we caught them in the act, shooting Tom in the leg during their escape. This forced them to call a doctor, who turned them in to us. It was only after the plot that Huck and Tom learned that Miss Watson, Jim's former owner, had set him free in her will when she recently passed.
And finally, where is Huck now?
Well, it had been revealed to Huck that his father had died, and so we stepped in to adopt him. But he refused, saying he had enough of civilizing, and is currently planning on setting out for the West.
After I left Silas Phelps's farm, I had only one thing left to do. The story of Huck and Jim conveyed such a profound message that I knew I needed to preserve it, nurture it, and bring it to the world for generations to come. Currently in the process of writing it up, and if I can capture a tale 1/10 of the true story of these two extraordinary men, I'll have succeeded. From Serial Podcast and KWMU St. Louis, this is Mark Twain, and thank you for listening.